Chester, and welcome to another edition of Girard at Large. I am your, can't believe I'm still awake host, Rich Girard. Thanks for tuning in. As you know, you can find us online at girardatlarge.com, and you can find us on Facebook and Twitter, also at Girard at Large, where we encourage you to like us and to follow us. Why? Because we've actually spent 15 years building a social media infrastructure there, and it's just something I can just pick up and transplant to Gab, MeWe, Codius, Minds, Tumblr, Parler, or any of the other ones that I've joined. However, if you are on any of those alternative platforms, we certainly encourage you to follow us there, as well as we will be updating those sites with our stuff as we continue to produce it. All right, we have a big show tonight if you're tuning in because you saw us on Facebook. And by the way, I don't know if you've got any bandwidth issues, Brendan, but I made a point of sharing this show's intent, which is to... We should be good. All right, so if you're streaming us live on Manchester Public Television's website, we welcome you. And for those of you on Facebook Live, not that we want you to leave Facebook Live, but we have slides, don't you know, the old PowerPoints that will be going over the air, which I can, I suppose, hold up to you here, but I don't think you're going to be able to see them. So you might want to use your phone or your computer to stream it if you can't watch it on TV so you can see the slides. And we're going to get to those in just a moment. Before we do, I want to thank Alderman at Large Joe Kelly Lavasser for having me co-host his show last night. We covered a lot of territory, and you'll be able to see that show on his Facebook page or on my personal Facebook page, Richard H. Girard. For some reason, I tried to save it to the Girard at Large and the Girard for Mayor pages and or share it to those pages, and it wouldn't share to those pages. I'm not sure why. That's a little weird, but it is on my personal page. We talked about things happening in the city. Of course, we talked about the mayor's race quite a bit, and so I would encourage you to tune in, especially if you've got an interest in homelessness, schools, whatchamacallit, the sober homes, and a whole bunch of other stuff where the discussions were had. So I do want to touch on something that the school board policy committee did this week, one of those shake your head moments. Apparently, they want the ability to use taxpayer dollars to teach discrimination to teachers and students and require such discrimination be taught to contractors with the district by preserving their right to use critical race theory. Now, I know it's a buzzword to many of you, and you maybe don't know what it really is, but let me encapsulate as simply as I can what critical race theory is. And it's simply this. It actually has its roots in a Marxist organization that came up with the idea to crystallize the thought that if you're white, you are an oppressive racist to all who are non-white, and you can never, your best efforts notwithstanding, be anything other than a racist because you are white. So in the true Marxist tradition, critical race theory creates the villain, the evil racist white race, and the victims, everybody else. So the idea that the school board would vote to, or the policy committee, which will make recommendations to the school board, would vote to oppose House Bill 544, which prevents taxpayer dollars from being used to train public employees or contractors with the public, with public government or their employees, that any race, any sex, any gender, any creed, any color, any ethnicity, any anything is inherently evil and oppressive, or it is inherently not evil and oppressed. That they would oppose that strikes me as racist in and of itself, and frankly, not something, if I were mayor, that I would tolerate. So, that being said, what we're going to do here tonight is we have a presentation, and I am going to lay out for you my plan for schools. And what I've done is, well, I guess we should get to it. So If you have any questions, I'm not sure if I'm going to wait till the end of the presentation to take questions. I think we'll do that. So Brendan, no questions or no calls until we get through the presentation, and then we'll only take calls. Well, I don't want to really limit it to what I've presented, but that would be my preference. Okay. So with that, let's have slide number 1. Saving Manchester's schools. Now, what happened to the other part of it? Innovating through choice. Uh-oh. I'm really not good with these presentations. Okay. Saving Manchester schools, innovating through choice. That is the title of this. Let's go to the next slide. All right. So in our introduction, what is this all about? Schools are important to the city, and they need to be saved. Parents have lost confidence. Taxpayers have lost patience. Manchester has lost families, and more of the same, just with more money, isn't going to work. Leadership is lacking, and the status quo has got to go. I want to take a minute, so bring it back to me here for a second. I want to take a minute to talk about the lacking leadership. One of the things that I really find most distressing about Mayor Craig's position on schools is that she believes the mayor should be removed from the school board. She's backed a charter amendment proposal that would remove the mayor from the school board. She thinks it makes it too political. Now, what you need to know about our charter is it makes the mayor the ex officio chairman of the school board. Ex officio means they serve by right, but they're not technically elected to the school board, so they don't have to serve. The mayor can, if they choose as chairman of the school board, can preside over meetings, and as with every other member of the school board, they have a vote, unlike at the Board of Aldermen where the mayor gets a vote when there's a tie. And unlike at the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, the mayor does not have a veto over what the school board does. So really, the mayor is just another member of the school board with a vote. The mayor is entitled to preside if the mayor wants to, but if the mayor does not want to, the vice chairman presides and takes care of all of the things that come with presiding, such as taking care of agendas. So if the mayor really believes that mayors just make it political, then perhaps the mayor should do what many of her predecessors have done, including Mayor Wazorek, Mayor Ginta, Mayor Bolio. I'm missing a mayor in there somewhere, who they didn't preside over school board meetings. They let the vice chairman of the school board preside over the meetings and handle the agendas and do all of the stuff that the presiding officer would do. Mayor Gatsis, Mayor Baines, they presided over the school board, and Mayor Craig has decided to. So why she doesn't, her practice isn't what in line with what her belief system is a question. But I firmly oppose the mayor being removed from the school board, because the mayor is the one person in this city that can rally the city and the schools and everybody around the necessary reforms that are needed to improve our schools. So that's just one reason why I say leadership is lacking, and anybody who's actually followed the school board for the last 3 or 4 years can see clearly multiple others. So if we could go back to the slides. Okay, so before a problem can be solved, what happened to all the subtitles? It has to be identified and understood. That's what the subtitle is. So let's take a look at some facts about the Manchester School District. Enrollment is down 28% since the 2006-2007 school year. That's over 4,500 students. The tuition towns have left, and they're responsible for about 40% of the overall enrollment decline. I said in the prior slide, right? Manchester parents have lost confidence. Well, certainly the sending towns have lost confidence, but almost 3,000 Manchester children are learning in non-Manchester schools. In other words, the parents of 3,000 kids are choosing to send their kids to a public charter school, a Catholic school, a private school, or to homeschool their kids. There are many more of these alternative schools in the works. And educational mobility, the ability for children to get what they need from either another school, the internet, or whatever is a thing and it's not going away. And these are all indicators, they're all symptoms that Manchester schools are failing. Next slide, please. So, a nightmare that needs leadership from Elm Street. Like my little play on the movie Nightmare from Elm Street. As enrollment has dropped, total school spending has soared. Let's show the graph. So this is a graph. It starts in 2009 because that's where we could get budget data going back before 2009, but 2009 was the most readily available. And it's showing total expenditures in the black line that goes from left to right, and it's showing enrollment in the green line that goes from right to left. And then there's the enrollment trend, which you may not be able to see, but it's a straight line that more or less goes down with the other green line. So let's take a look. In 2009, the city was spending just over $145 million on just under 16,000 students. This current budget year, the city is spending $183 million on 12,300 students. So as enrollment has fallen off a cliff, spending has gone through the roof. Next slide, please. The nightmare that still needs leadership from Elm Street: as test scores have cratered, per pupil spending has skyrocketed. Let's take a look at that graph. And, okay, I'm going to have to read this one to you. So there are a bunch of lines here. The first two lines going left to right, down top to bottom, the very top line, which is blue, is proficiency in English. The orange line, which is right under the blue line, is proficiency in math. Going left to right from bottom to top, in 2009, the city was spending about $9,400 per student. And in 2021, the city was spending over $14,500 per student. And I'm going to tell you in just a minute how we calculated that. And factored for inflation, that $9,500 or $9,400 that was being spent per student, if we had just gone through inflation, right, per pupil spending in the district would be over just over $11,500. So the cost per pupil since 2009 has increased 61%. Inflation has increased by 29%. So we are more than double the inflation rate in per pupil spending since 2009. And what the spending includes is everything that the city appropriates. This is not the same calculation that the state does, where the state leaves out debt service and transportation and school food, nutrition, things that cost the taxpayers of the city of Manchester somewhere in the ballpark of $25 million. This is everything that the city appropriates for the schools, and it does not count any of the federal funds that we get, because those are all off budget. If we did that, the per pupil numbers would be even more amazing. So you can see that our proficiency scores in English have fallen from about 58% overall as a district down to about 32%. And that's as of 2019, because there were no standardized tests last year. And math has fallen from about 51% down to under 25%. So as the district has gotten worse and worse, the per pupil expenditures have become more and more. So anyone who says that there's a correlation between higher spending and better test scores or better education ought to make note of this graph. Next slide, please. So the taxpayers are taking a really big hit. They actually pay more of their income for schools than those in other communities and get worse results. Here's a handy-dandy little chart. I really hope you can see this. Okay, at the top, let me show you what's this is based on the household median income, meaning half of the people in the city make more than the median and half make less. So this is comparing Manchester to Dover, Nashua, Derry, Hooksett, Candia, Pelham, Merrimack, Londonderry, Auburn, Bedford, and Windham. Manchester's the top line. We have a median household income of $60,711 in this city. The per pupil expenditure on average is $12,434, which means 20% of the average household income, the median household income in the city of Manchester is spent per pupil. And what are we getting for achievement, proficiency in math and reading? 24% are proficient in math, 44% are proficient in reading. Well, we could look at this chart any number of ways, but median household income per pupil, Manchester 20%, Dover 18% on a median income of $71,600, Nashua 18% on a median income of $75,000, Derry 21% on a median income of $76,000. Those taxpayers are feeling the pain. Hooksett, 19% on a median income of $84,500. Candia, someone needs to do some budget work in Candia, 18% on a median income of $101,000. They're spending $18,000 per pupil in Candia. Pelham, 14% on $106,000. Merrimack, 16% on $107,000. Londonderry, 16% on $108,000. Auburn, 10% on $115,000. Bedford, 11% on $135,000, and Wyndham, 10% on $148,459. And these expenditure numbers, because we got them from the state, reflect the state's calculation per pupil. It's interesting, but there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of correlation between the money spent per student and the results gotten, although Wyndham and Bedford are clearly head and shoulders above the rest, and my guess is that's because Wyndham and Bedford probably have the most intact two-parent family homes versus the others. But as you can see, there isn't, outside of those two communities and maybe Auburn, I'm not looking around and seeing a whole lot of success for the extra money spent, but clearly Manchester is an outlier and well below the performances of others. The possible exception of Nashua at 39% proficient in math and 46% proficient in English. Okay, so now that I've outlined the problem for you and the thesis, let's get to the answers. The solution, it's innovation brought about by choice. Yes, I'm going to say the C word, the choice word, when it comes to schools. Why? Because choices exist in education. Manchester families are choosing to move to other communities for their schools. They're moving to Hooksett. They're moving to Bedford. They're moving out of the city, and this has been an issue. But more importantly, or as importantly, they're choosing among the many and growing number of alternative schooling options. There are at least 1,000 kids from Manchester in Catholic schools. There are now, thanks to COVID, about 1,000 kids in Manchester that are in homeschools. There are about 1,000 kids in Manchester or from Manchester that are in charter schools, and that doesn't count miscellaneous private schools. So when I say there are 3,000 kids, or 20% of the eligible school-age population in the city of Manchester, I truly believe I'm undercounting that number. But whereas, say, Dr. Vargas was very forthcoming with those numbers, the current administration is hard to get, more direct numbers out of. Although they have given me some, but they haven't given me the charter numbers, interestingly, or the Catholic school numbers, but they did give me the homeschool numbers, and there was a big jump in homeschooling because of the COVID. And even without the COVID, by the way, folks, the enrollment decline in Manchester is pretty serious. But let's talk for a minute, right? Because you have multiple public charter schools, which are public schools. The city does not fund them, the state does. There are multiple online options, which just exploded because of the pandemic. They aren't going away anytime soon. And sometimes they're a hybrid, right? It's not just used by homeschoolers. It's used a lot by families that want their kids to be able to self-direct their education, or they want supplements like the VLAX, the Virtual Learning Academy Charter School, which is a New Hampshire charter school with something like 30,000 students, where kids can take classes, oftentimes advanced classes, online. And Dr. Vargas used to, make that point to parents who are looking for more rigorous curriculum in the Manchester School District. One of the things that he used to do to try to keep them in the schools was tell them that they could stay in school to take all these different classes, but if they wanted, an advanced math class that wasn't available or a language class or something, he would often refer them to VLAX. And I think, we need to be aware that these charter schools, the more charter schools are coming, especially with the state getting a grant for over $40 million. I think it was $44 million to help start new charter schools in the state. More charter schools are coming. More online options are coming. There are scholarship programs that are helping low and moderate income families send their kids to schools that are better suited for them than the failing schools that they are required to attend because of where they live. And there's state legislation that is going to add to the educational mobility of families by making even more funding available to them. And choice does exist here in the Manchester School District. Very limited, but it does exist. And the best example, the biggest example of it is the Manchester School of Technology. See, if you live on the west side of the river, you're required to go to West. If you live north of Valley Street, you're pretty much required to go to Central. And if you live south of Valley Street, you're going to Memorial. That's the general outline of how we assign our high schools. But then we have the Manchester School of Technology, which does not have an attendance district unless you consider the whole city its attendance district. And so kids who go there have to make the choice to go there, and they and their parents have to apply to go there. Yes, we would like to go there. So while Central, West, and Memorial have lost 3,500 kids since Bedford left West at the end of the 2006-2007 school year, we've lost all the tuition students, right? Hooksit's 600 are gone. Bedford's 900 are gone. That's 1,500, and Candia and Auburn were each about 200. So we've lost 1,900 kids. Little more than half of the kids in the high school are gone because the tuition towns chose to leave. And Hooksett in particular, right? Hooksett created a school choice system where Hooksett kids could come to any one of Manchester's 4 high schools, or they could go to Londonderry, Pinkerton, Goffstown, Bedford, Pembroke Academy, Bow. They have lots of choices. And so impressive is our school district to the parents and children of Hooksett that fewer than 10% of the once more than 600 kids that came to our schools now come to Manchester schools, even though they have the run of the place. Well, we limit our own kids, with the exception of the Manchester School of Technology, which, because it provides a desired alternative that so many families want, is oversubscribed. It means it's got too many kids. And so without the available space that we're using at Memorial, space I actually fought pretty hard to use for the expansion of MST when I was on the school board, because of all those empty classrooms at Memorial, because Memorial, which once had 2,300 kids, now has 1,300 or 1,400 kids. There's plenty of room. All you got to do is walk across the street, and that's worked out just fine. So no kids had to be turned away that wanted to go to MST. Back in the day of No Child Left Behind, if memory serves me correctly, there were about 2,500 kids in Manchester that exercised their right under federal law to leave their failing school, the ones where the proficiency scores weren't making the cut, and to attend another school in Manchester. And that was one of the big drives that former Mayor Gatz has had to try and get redistricting done, was to put an end to that school choice and require kids to go back to the school of their attendance district and, try to address overcrowding issues that way. Of course, No Child Left Behind going away, made it possible to get rid of that school choice. So Manchester does have a history of school choice, and to a lesser degree, the STEAM Ahead program at West, the Naval Junior ROTC program at West. These are magnet programs in a school, which if kids like mine did, right? I had 2 kids that were being homeschooled, and they chose to go to West, even though I lived just a few blocks from Central, because they wanted to take the college courses at Manchester Community College that were made available by the STEAM Ahead program. And my third child, who was in a public charter school, saw her sister and brother going to these college courses and said, "Dad, can I do that too?" And I said, "Dad, can I do that too?" And I said, "Yeah." And she transferred into West, I think, her sophomore year. So where there are things that the schools are offering, there's an opportunity to get kids back into the schools, right? So there is a history of choice here. So if we could put up the next slide. So the history of choice here says, this is what I would do. So this is the solution. And I call it the Manchester Educational Marketplace. I'm really sorry that I didn't get those subtitles right. The Manchester Educational Marketplace. What I would do for every school in the district is eliminate all attendance districts. Okay, so in other words, parents would be able to choose whichever school they wanted to send their kid to, whether it was across the street or it was across the city. In order to do this, for choice to work, though, there have to be options. The Manchester School District as a district, I don't believe, is flexible enough or capable enough to develop the options. Bring it back to me for a second, Brendan. To develop the options that parents are looking for. And clearly, as people have fled the city and people have pulled their kids out of the schools, the school district has failed to respond. The closest response that the school district has had to these changes is the creation of the STEAM Ahead program. And, while it was off to a promising initial start, I'm not sure that anybody is leaving Central or Memorial to go over to West. The STEAM Ahead program at McLaughlin Middle School, almost no kids go from STEAM at McLaughlin to STEAM at West because they want to follow their friends to Memorial. But the truth of the matter is that for the district to compete, it needs to be flexible, it needs to be nimble, and it needs to be responsive to parents. And it's none of those. And I don't have any hope because of the nature of the system that as a district it will ever be. I do have hope, though, that individual schools where the principals and the teachers and the educators in the buildings who are innovative, dedicated, understand what families need and want, I think they should be free to develop the options, the plans, the programs that will say to parents, hey, if we have this, and parents looking for that will say, I really like what they're doing over at Parker Varney. It doesn't matter that I live up on Smith Road. I really like that no-grade approach that Parker Varney's using. I want my kid to be able to go there. As it is now, the only kids that can go there are kids who live in Parker Varney's attendance district. So it's just a system that doesn't work, and not for nothing, there are people who go to Parker Varney that don't like that system, but they're in the attendance district, so they have to go there. And that's a problem. So we eliminate the attendance districts. We enable you can bring the slides back up. We enable the educators at individual schools to create options for families, right? It's all about personalized learning. How do you have personalized learning? Bring it back to me. How do you have personalized learning in a system where kids, where the school board's mantra is, if you have it at one school, you have to have it at every school? And before I was on the school board, when I was on my radio show, there were motions being made, and it was particular to the high schools, but it basically works this way at all of the schools. And that is, if a class is offered at Central, you have to offer that class at Memorial and West, or if it's at West, or wherever it is, unless it was like a specific, magnet program where there really weren't enough kids to do it in any school, and it was kind of a district-wide thing, like the STEAM Ahead, or like the theater nights, or like the ROTC. So what they did is they forced all of these classes from all of these that were unique to all of these schools into all of the other schools, because that's what made it fair, and it completely ignored the individual character of the school, how the program developed, why it was at the school in the first place, the demand that was there for it. It was just an utter catastrophe. So this idea that everything has to be the same, if you offer it in one school, you have to offer it in another. If you're using this math book in one school, then you have to use this math book in another school, because if a kid moves and they go from this school to that school, well, it's an understandable byproduct of a system that requires you to go to school based on where you live and nothing else. But when you're trying to do that across 21 or 22 schools, it doesn't work. And clearly Manchester has failed to do that. So bring the slide back up. So families would get to choose the school that they send their kids to because of the options that are being offered at the school, whether it's across the street or across the city. And this is a key part. Money follows the child. So in my system, right, if you send your kids to Gosler Park school, then the school district will pay Gosler Park School the per pupil amount, whatever it is, for your kid to be in that school. Bring it back to me. That's important because the money following the child becomes an incentive for the school to do better. As somebody whose kids have gone to private schools, Catholic schools, charter schools, and have been homeschooled, I can tell you that at every single one of those non-public schools, there is huge parent participation in their kids' education because the parents are paying to be there. Now, that's not the case with the public charter school, but because they're choosing to be there, and they're choosing to be there because the school is offering something they're interested in. Maybe it's an approach, maybe it's a curriculum, maybe it's an emphasis. It doesn't matter, right? They're choosing to be there, just like the School of Technology. Kids are choosing to be there. So you have much higher student engagement, much higher parent engagement, and at some point you recognize that this is a marketplace. If you have unhappy parents, if they don't think they're getting the results they should be getting, if the school isn't doing what it advertised, then they have the opportunity to say, okay, Gosler Park, don't like you, I'm going to go to Jewett Street, and my money will follow my child to Jewett Street. And this becomes a pretty key part in determining what programs and what schools are ultimately viable because the money follows the child. Okay, so there are, giving the people in the buildings the ability to, you can go back to the slides, giving the people the ability to have their, the money follow the child means that the school district, in enabling the schools to develop the programs that will attract those parents and their vouchers, there's flexibility in the system and there are inherent incentives in the system. Whereas, right now the strive for sameness, it's a top-down dictate. You're being told, even in areas where there's innovation, right? They're experimenting with something. Like there's talk about, I think they actually passed a motion. They have determined that Beach Street School, bring it back to me, is going to be the home of the district's elementary school STEAM Ahead program. Why? Why Beach Street? Are you going to open it up to every kid in the district to go to that kind of program? What about kids in the Beach Street School District that have got no interest in that? Beach Street School has a huge immigrant and refugee population. Beach Street School has got multiple languages there spoken before English. Why would you choose Beach Street School, crazy dog look, to be the home of the STEAM Ahead program for elementary school kids? Why wouldn't you choose Beach Street School as a place for maybe, dual immersion kind of education? But you see, when you have a school board making a decision about a building in the district that is going to be home to a program, you get these curious, quizzical things. So when you take the school board out of that and you let the schools determine the programs that they're going to offer, subject, of course, to the blessing of the school board, then you get things that interest the educators. It plays to their strengths. They have say in, they have buy-in, they have say, and it just works a whole lot better. Okay, let's go back to the slides. The solution, why this will work, and I've already touched on some of this, it engages educators. We're missing there. Thank you. It engages educators at the building level to create options. If you believe, as I do, that Manchester's got many talented, innovative, dedicated educators who understand the needs of the families that they serve and are just looking for an opportunity to come up with a program that will assist in meeting that need, then, you should be all over this like a fumble. It removes the school board from being, as we talked about, from being the determiner of what ingenious program we're going to play today. It gives parents choices, right? We've covered that because parents that have choices are involved. They're involved. It reduces transiency. One of the things that hurts a lot of our schools is kids coming in and out a lot. And why do they come in and out of the school a lot? Why do they start at Beach Street, go over to Henry Wilson, end up at Hallsville, come back to Beach Street? Well, it's because their parents move. And when their parents move across attendance district lines, they have to change schools. That's dumb. In this scenario, it doesn't matter where the parent lives or how often the parent moves. The kid gets to stay at the school if that's the school they chose to send the kid to. That's great for the kid, and it's great for the school because it provides consistency both in enrollment and in education within whatever the school is doing. That's a win-win. And what I like, one of the things I like best about this proposal is it allows educators, you can bring the slide back up, at the building level to directly enter into partnerships with colleges, businesses, other community groups. Imagine if you had a school that partnered with the Currier Gallery of Art to provide an arts program. Imagine that. How phenomenal would that be? Or what if West High School wanted to make some changes, wanted to make some changes to the STEAM Ahead program. And they wanted to have an emphasis on the medical part of the profession. And so they partnered with Catholic Medical Center, which is literally 2 blocks up the street. I mean, think of the possibilities where schools, where the professionals in the schools, the educators in the schools say, you know what, we can do this and create something that they can get business buy-in, maybe college buy-in, community buy-in. What if someone wanted to start an early college high school? That's a thing, We have UNH, we have MCC, we have SNU, we have Granite State College. We have all kinds of options here that we can start to make available to the kids. There is state legislation. It's House Bill 609. It's passed both the House and the Senate. It's waiting for the governor's. You can go back to the slides. Waiting for the governor's signature. When I do this, bring it back to me. When I do that, you can go back to the slides, okay? There, we came up with hand signals. That's cool. It allow school districts to create either innovation schools or innovation zones, which basically says, come up with a plan and tell us what state Board of Education rules need to be waived, and we'll take a look. Well, gee. Do you want the school district administration sitting there going, I think we want to try this over here at Highland Goss Falls School? Or do you want the people at Highland Goss Falls School saying, you know what, we're excited about doing this and coming up with the plan that then the school board can approve and submit to they can do it. So I don't believe that the school district can compete with the more nimble, capable, focused individual schools, whether they're public charters, Catholic, private, homeschool, or anything else, as a district. But I do believe that our individual schools, if given the opportunity to do it, can come up with the programs and compete with those other schools, because now you're working at the same level as those other schools. And I think, you could say, we always talk about gifted and talented programs, or at-risk, or special ed, or early college, high school, vocational programs, dual immersion, all kinds of different things. And for those of you who don't know what dual immersion is, it's kind of like the old days of Greek school, or going to the old French Catholic schools, right, where half the day was in French or Greek or whatever language, and the other half was in English, right? So where you've got so many different languages spoken here in the city of Manchester, I'm thinking there are probably some dual immersion education opportunities, don't you? So I think we could, I'm sure I would be pleasantly surprised by the range and quality of options that the people in our school buildings came up with as a way of saying to the parents of this community, here's what we have for you and your children, so they can effectively compete. Because right now, frankly, our competitors are eating our lunch. And if we're not ready for some of the other changes that look like they're on the way, we are going to get, I don't even know what hand signal I get. We're going to get eaten alive. Okay, so here is part of something that we can use. We can hit the slides now. Already in New Hampshire law is an interesting option. Local school boards can actually create charter schools. Now, for those of you who aren't terribly familiar with charter schools basically are schools that operate outside of the whole rule set. They are allowed. They were actually created to show the public school systems, and they are a public school, how to innovate, how to create, how to do things differently, think out of the box. And along the way, they became the enemy of the public school system. And all but one, I believe, of the charter schools in New Hampshire right now, are chartered by the State Board of Education. But New Hampshire law, our state law, allows local school boards to actually create charter schools. Now, they can convert an existing school to a charter school. There's a process. It requires the teachers of the district to approve, the principal, the superintendent, everybody else. Or they can create new charter schools. And in the law, it says new charter schools can be formed by a nonprofit organization, including, but not limited to, a college, university, museum, service club, or similar entity, 2 or more New Hampshire certified teachers, or a group of 10 or more parents. Okay? So local charter schools are funded by the school district, just like a regular school is, and they're subject to the school board, just like a regular school is. And there's more than $40 million in federal grants that the state of New Hampshire Department of Education has received to start new charters. So back to my Courier Museum example. Or what if the Courier wanted to come up with a charter school focused on the arts? What if the Boys and Girls Club wanted to come up with a charter school that was focused on at-risk kids? What if the University of New Hampshire at Manchester wanted to come up with a charter school focused on early college, high school kind of thing? I mean, there is no. What if Catholic Medical Center wanted to come up with a charter? So all of this can happen within our school district that provides our families with options that they get to choose from. And my guess is that not only will we stop the bleeding of students from our system, whether they leave the city or they just simply leave the schools, but my guess is people are going to start to take a look around and go, that sort of medical arts charter school at West High School that partnered with the Catholic Medical Center, my little Susie might really like that. And that could be a parent from Bedford, or a parent from Wyndham, or a parent from Londonderry saying that. Now, wouldn't it be nice if the city were in a position where it could say, okay, you can send your kid here. Here is the tuition that you're going to pay. Or, even better, as the late Alex Trebek would say when the wrong answer was given, ooh, sorry. Wouldn't it be better if we said these schools are available to Manchester children only? If you'd like your child to attend the Manchester school that has the program you're interested in, you must move to the city of Manchester. And good news, because we don't have attendance districts, you can live anywhere you want in the city. Imagine that. And my guess is if we free our educators and the individual building level to develop these programs and ideas, you're going to see a lot of people looking at Manchester going, wow, that dual immersion program at, Henry Wilson School. I like that. I want my kid to go there. Think about it, folks. This is really kind of exciting stuff. Next slide. So, how do you get started? Well, first, the joke line is not there. I'm such a loser. It said, elect Rich Girard mayor. But anyway, seriously though, for as many of these things as I can figure out on my own, right? I can't figure out everything. And so if elected mayor, somewhere between the time I'm elected and Inauguration Day, and no later than Inauguration Day, I'm going to announce a team of people, a task force, if you will, that will be tasked with the job of coming up with the program that will transition, that will create the school choice system and the transition of that transition to that system from the current, attendance district driven, district conformity sameness model. Okay, so there will be parents, there will be teachers, there will be, experts in this area that will be tasked with identifying all of the issues that need to be identified and coming up with plans that address them. Of course, there will be public input and all of that fun stuff. So while I have the concept down and I have the 30,000-foot view, there are an awful lot of details that people, Henry Ford once said something to the effect of, make sure that the people around you are smarter than you are. That's sort of my approach to this. And I think if we do that and we bring in the stakeholders, we bring in the experts, we bring in the parents, the teachers, whoever, to identify the issues, construct the system, and figure out how to transition it, make sure the community's informed and involved. By the time it gets to the school board for adoption, it should be ready to go. And, I think that this works because it does provide flexibility. It does create better educational opportunities. It provides, and I think this is key, the second to last bullet point, direct participation in the creation of alternatives better aligns resources to outcomes and provides accountability for results. Accountability is naturally built into a charter school, not a charter school, a school choice system, because if the school is not attracting students, then the offerings of the school are not meeting the need, and therefore the school needs to change, or the school board needs to do something about that school's existence. That's the way it works. And so where you can have everybody who's part of it designing it have a direct association between resources and an alignment with their outcome, right? That automatically provides accountability. And then I really do think that more families, and this is where the taxpayers need to be mindful, because, yes, when enrollment goes down, right, you have less overhead costs, but overhead is a lagging indicator, right? So overhead, I'll give you an example. When Hooksett was looking around, and cutting all these choice deals with all these towns around us, Londonderry did something very, very smart. Londonderry, they did two things that were really smart. Londonderry said to Hooksett, look, even though our cost of education is higher, we will allow you to pay the same tuition that you would pay to Manchester for every kid you send to our high school. But Londonderry also said, however, we're going to cap the number of kids that we take so that we do not incur any additional overhead, meaning we don't have to hire more teachers, we don't have to buy more books, we don't have to add to our human or physical infrastructure to educate your kids. So all of the money that Londonderry got from Hooksett, or gets from Hooksett, is pure gravy because there's no additional expense to them. Okay, so yes, We have many fewer students, and there has been some reduction in overhead, not nearly enough based on what the numbers say we can do. And that's a real problem that we have in the city, is it has not been as aggressive as it could have been and should have been in downsizing its overhead. But you never get rid of all of the overhead as you lose student enrollment, okay? So more families choosing Manchester and its schools mean enrollment goes up, so the overhead cost per pupil actually goes down. The direct investment from the community groups, the businesses, whoever the schools partner with, help offset the cost. And then, of course, the school district gets state and federal aid for every child that's in the district. And if we're successful, for example, in saying to homeschoolers, and there are a lot of them now, hey, you know what? It's great that you homeschool, but maybe you need help with computer classes, or maybe you want your kid to take phys ed, or maybe you want, when we were homeschooling our kids, they went up to Hillside for the chorus classes because they wanted to be part of that. They also competed on Hillside sports teams. Every kid that comes into the school district, even if it's just for a class or two a day, the state gives the city aid for educating that child. Now, it's not the full aid. It's a percentage that represents their participation in the school, but it's revenue to the city. So the more kids we bring in from whatever source, the more money we get from the state and federal governments to help sop up that stranded overhead cost. Think of it this way, right? When you look at your electric bill, you have something called stranded cost. That's the bill you're stuck with after the government did stupid things to, force plants to spend hundreds of millions of dollars before they shut them down or sold them at a loss to somebody else. You're stuck with that stranded cost. Well, the more kids we can get in to bring in money that offsets that stranded overhead, the better. Now, this isn't going to happen overnight. Next slide, please. This isn't going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. It's going to take patience. It's going to take persistence, due diligence, and care. And I will tell you, as mayor, I will be dedicated to the proposition. But this is about creating new and better options for families that provide them with the personalized, and this is the key, the personalized learning options they need and want, and that our children deserve. If we do this, families will choose Manchester because of the quality options its schools provide, and we will revive and rescue our public school system, and the city will thrive well into the future because of it. So that is what we put together. The narrative, I like to publish narratives, right? Some people call them missives. Some people call them trilogies. The one thing I haven't been able to do, as with my homeless plan, is get this onto, quote, a sheet of paper, because I think it's important that people understand the nature of the problem so they understand the reason for the solution. And that's what I've done here. The nature of the problem here in the city of Manchester is that the district over time has failed to respond to the needs, wants, demands, and desires of its parents to provide the educational opportunities they believe their kids need and deserve. So the question becomes, how do you do that? And we can clearly take a look and see, as a district, we have failed to do that. And I'm not picking on Manchester really, because there aren't a whole lot of school districts that are considered hotbeds of innovation. However, you can find individual schools in multiple districts across the country that are doing something unique, something fun, something interesting, something successful, but it's not on a systemic basis. So what makes this different is we're giving every school in the city of Manchester the opportunity, we're giving every school in the city of Manchester the opportunity to be that interesting, innovative, exciting place that is catering to, providing for a special need, a special want, a special desire, playing to a special passion or interest, a skill set that they have. For example, that's how Central, for example, ended up with so many unique classes. It just ended up playing to the strengths of its staff and allowing them to come up with things that interested them. And because it interested them, it interested the kids. This is kind of along the same line here, except that there are needs in this, this educational marketplace that are being met by non-Manchester public schools. Those needs are going to continue to be met on a greater and greater scale. And if the City of Manchester Schools does not respond in a way that says to parents, you can have confidence in what we're doing, these are the programs and options that are available for your kids, this is how it's going to work, these are the results you're going to see, etc., just like it works at the Catholic schools, the charter schools, the private schools, even homeschooling to a degree, right? So everybody knows what they're getting into when they go to one of these non-public school options, just like everybody kind of knows what they're getting into when they go into the public school option, which is why more than 20% of our kids, or 20% of the kids who are eligible to go to a Manchester public school, go somewhere else, to say nothing of the countless families that have moved, particularly middle-class families, that have moved out of the city because they're concerned about the schools, albeit among other things, but they're concerned about the schools, right? So that's why this works. This is what I'll pursue, and this is what really needs to happen. Because, I think a school like Parker Varney that's got a unique kind of program could probably do very, very well in a system like this. But I think a school like Parker Varney will have a limited impact when it's part of a system that doesn't let students or parents into that innovative thing that they're doing because they don't live in the right neighborhood, okay? There's too much mobility in the system now, whether it's because of all the different offerings and the growing demand by parents to have better. Funny thing is if our deceased relatives who grew up in the city of Manchester came back, they probably wouldn't recognize much about the city. But if they walked into Central High School or the old West High School building, they'd probably recognize that, right? So you get choices of where you go to do your grocery shopping or to buy your gas. Choices in everything, except the government tells you where you have to go to school. That's coming to an end, folks. And so this program really is, this proposal of mine is really about rescuing the City of Manchester schools from an inevitable doom, a fate that's going to see more and more. Look, I'll leave you with this. You could close schools in the City of Manchester to sop up some of the extra space and reduce some of that overhead cost. Let me ask you something. How long is it going to be before you have to close more schools because you keep doing the same things the same way and watch kids go away from the schools, watch families go away from the city just because they're looking for other options? If you don't change what you're doing in the buildings, you're going to end up closing a whole lot more of them. Where if you change what you're doing in the buildings, it just might fill some of them up. I am your ever humble host, Rich Girard. Thanks for tuning in. Until next week, be good, be well, don't do anything we wouldn't do. We're proud to have in the audience. Thanks for being there. Details of this program will be at girardformayor.com starting Friday around noontime. Be sure to click in and get them. Good night.